My name is Dr. Daisy M. Brooks. I am the President CEO of Daisy's Resource Developmental Center, which is a resource development center that offers services to girls ages 12 to 18 who are experiencing a degree of behavioral problems, girls who have been neglected and abused by their families. Our focus is to provide counseling, educational component, medical services, and all of the things that will assist a girl in her becoming independent and self-sufficient.
All right. Honorable Senator Russell, would you give a word or two about you?
I'd first like to give honor to God for this assembly this morning, and so He graciously allowed us to move and have our being. And all that we are or hope to be, we have to give Him honor and glory for that. My background today is not from the political nature, although there are some things I would probably mention as we move into the workshop, but my background is in the area of real estate and investment, and I think it's a very exciting area. I've been involved in real estate investment and insurance for 13 years. We have several family-owned businesses as a result of that, and I think real estate particularly is a tremendous opportunity for investment with black people. I'm interested in sharing that because I think that as a people, we've got to now focus on economics, and particularly the church people. We need to show a new zeal and a new look. And God is not a broke down, closed up, shut down, raggedy God. And so I want us to challenge that by those of us who profess to be His children and close to His cross, that we would come out with a new attitude toward the area of finance. And so the Lord is dealing with us in that area, and I'm hoping to share some things with you in that area. And as it relates to even what Daisy was saying and what I would be saying in the area of politics, it all intertwines, and you find yourself dealing with the government in any business endeavor. So you must know how to work with the government, how to approach the government. But I think, the opportunities in that area is unlimited.
I would like to start by giving you some generic basis of starting a business. And I think one of the first things that you need to decide is the kind of business that you want to go into. But first of all, you need to really like what you're going to do. It's almost impossible to start any business, first of all, if you don't like what you're doing, because it's going to be very hard. It's difficult enough as it is to have your own business or to start a business. But if you don't like it, can you imagine trying to go to work every day doing something that you really don't enjoy doing? So the first thing you need to do is really make sure that you're going to like what you're doing. And starting a business also, normally the right way to do it is to do a feasibility study. But my success in business has been, rather than doing a feasibility study, I go in prayer, and I do fasting, and I seek God for guidance. And if you do that, really a feasibility study is not necessary, because once your business is sanctioned by God, really that's all the study that you need. And all the business that I have gone into, I'm not bragging, but I'm just trying to state some facts here, that I have been successful, and it's because I have allowed God to guide me in the things that I do. I go to Him if I'm having any problems in trying to make a decision on what I should do next, or whatever. I just go and pray and ask. I say, Lord, am I on the right track? Am I going in the right direction? If so, I would like to see some sign. And once I get that sign, I go for it. And no matter who try and stop me, whether it's an agency, the city, or licensing people or accreditation people, it just goes real smoothly, and it's because I've already got the sanction. So just make sure that if you decide to go into business, make sure that you go on the right track by consulting with the Almighty and asking Him for direction. And normally, as I have experienced it, it'll always turn out successfully. You also know the type of program. You need to define the type of program that you want to go into, whether it's factory sales, fast food, and in my case, it's human services. most of the basic guidelines are essentially the same in reference to setting up starting a business. It doesn't matter what kind of business that you go into, because the guidelines, you have to go for zoning, you have to go for locations, and all those things. There are basic things that you have to go through, like I said, regardless of the kind of business that you go into. You also need to think about the physical plan of the building. That's very important. Your layout, whether you build a building, whether you buy a building that's already been constructed prior to. Now, I find that sometimes buying a building that's already been constructed, because if the building is old, and with the new guidelines in reference to fire regulations, those kinds of things, normally older buildings, I'm not saying that you can't buy an older building, but sometimes you end up spending more money buying a building, renovating it, than trying to build a new construction, because that way you can get most of the things that you need, comply with the zoning ordinance and with the state, local, and federal guidelines in building a new building. Now, in some cases, that cannot happen because, first of all, you got to have land, and if you don't have land, you can't build a building. So if you can find a building, of course, that you can renovate without a lot of changing to fit the present guidelines, that's fine. But again, in my case, I was very fortunate to have been able to build new buildings. It just so happened that I had this extra land that I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. So I ended up building buildings from scratch that I designed, and I was also the general contractor. And that's another thing. I'm not a learned contractor, but by, again, seeking God, asking for directions, and He's given me some, I guess, talents that I didn't even know I had. And when you design a building, you have to have some kind of insight as to what kind of physical plant that you want. And I've been very fortunate that the buildings that I have constructed have turned out very well, and I'm very, very pleased about that. Also, the location of your business is very important, because if you're depending on clients, and that again, it depends on the kind of business that you have, or kind of programs that you have, the location is very important. I mean, for instance, if you want to build a daycare center, you don't want to build one out in the backwoods someplace, and people have to drop their kids off, get to work at a certain time. You don't want them to have to drive all over town to find your place and get to work and picking their kids up after they get off from work. So the location, depending again on the kind of business that you have, is very, very important. When you go into business, there are several steps that you have to take. One, as I said before, is defining the program that you want to offer services for. There are a lot of zoning ordinance that you have to adhere to. If you decide to build a building, buy a building that's already been built, you make sure that the zoning is going to is going to help or going to allow you to have that program. If you build a building in a residential, or if you buy a building in a residential area, and if it's not zoned for that, you may have problems getting it zoned. So you may need to check that out first, because I would hate to see you buy a building and then try and go for a zoning, and you get objections from the residents in that area. And once you get objection, and most time from the residents from that area, 9 times out of 10, the zoning department is going to turn you down. So here you are stuck with this building, and you can't get zoning for it. So that's very important. Whether you buy or whether you build a building, make sure that it's going to meet the zoning ordinances. Income and fees of the agency. Make sure that any program that you are choosing to go into, that somebody's going to support it, okay? Whether it's daycare, whether it's sales, or whatever. And in order to do that, you may want to do some searching to find out if the services that you're going to be offering is needed, and also, if it's needed, how are you going to generate your income? whether it's going to be from private fees or an agency-sponsored program. If it's private fees, then you need to know whether or not those services are needed in that particular area, or the kind of services that you're going to be providing is going to be supported. And also, if you're expecting the government to support or to sponsor the program, you may want to check with the agency to make sure that what you are doing, again, that it's needed, and not only that it's needed, are you going to get a contract with them? Are they going to contract it out? And if they are, don't just take their word for it. Make sure that they sign a contract specifying the amount of money that you can expect to generate from that business. That is very important, because again, you don't want to set up a business and being expected for it to be sponsored by the federal government, state government, or local government, that they're going to sponsor it, and also make sure that you get a signed contract prior to. Your budget, this is what you have to decide. You have to make up your own budget, because you're the only one that knows how much money you want to make, how much you're going to spend out for certain things. So you make up a budget, and most time they expect you, or they recommend that you do a 5-year projection budget, so that in 5 years you'll kind of know where you are. If you make up a budget just for 1 year, things can really change in a year. In fact, a lot of hidden costs that you have that comes up, you won't even think about it, because they don't even come up until the 2nd or the 3rd year. So you need to make at least a 5-year projection. In reference to the size of your budget, that will also depend on the size of your business. And again, only you can make those determinations. Nobody can come in and tell you the size of your building or the size of your program. Only you can make that decision. And in order to do that, you may need some help with your accountant to set up a projected budget as to what your income is expected to be over a period of 5 years. Again, I mentioned about how your funds are generated. Just make sure that you're going to be getting funds, whether it comes from private fees or federal or state agency. Anytime you have a business, you have to have policies. Most businesses, there are basic policies that you have to adhere to, but you can add any policy to your business that you want. You're not hampered in that way, as long as you don't deviate from the basic policies that you have to adhere to in reference to state, federal guidelines or whatever. You can set up your own policies in reference to personnel policies. If you have clients, you need client policies, and only you can decide what you want to go on in your building. There's no law telling you after the basic policies as to the enhancement of your program, the extent of your program. You can make that determination, and you should always think that you don't just want just an average program. You always want to make sure that the things that you're offering at least is as well as somebody else, or make sure that it's better. I've always tried to make sure that I'm offering a little better services than another agency. Not that I'm running in competition, but it's just some things I mean, if you're like me, you want the best. And in order to do that, you have to be the one to make those enhancements in your program. Policies, there's no limit on policies. Depending on what you're offering, the kind of services that you're offering, and you can set your policies accordingly. Because I'm in human services, the things that I'm saying is going to be kind of related to things that would normally happen in a human services program. But as I said before, it doesn't matter whether you're in human services, fast food, sales, or whatever. Some of your basic things still is the same. The benefits that you offer your employees, again, you have to make that decision. There are certain benefits that you have to offer, which is if a person works 40 hours a week, You have to give them vacation, sick time, breaks, and that kind of thing. But there are a lot of other benefits that you can offer that doesn't necessarily mean the basic kind of policies. And again, you need to make a decision as to what kind of benefits you want to offer, and that depend on your budget. You can't go in offering 5 weeks vacation when you can only afford 1 week. So you need to really think about it when you're doing your budget as to the additional benefits that you want to offer. In reference to salaries, salaries are kind of based again on your budget, but what I normally do when I'm offering a salary to a person, I will check with other agencies as if I'm applying for a job and just ask them, what are your salaries for this position? What are your salaries for that position? And then once you get a average salary based on the things that you are doing, then you set your salaries and make sure that your salaries are competitive to other agencies doing similar things to what you're doing. Because if you hire a person in your agency who is a counselor and you're paying them X number of dollars per year or whatever, and another agency in another location have counselors there and they're paying their counselors a lot more money than you are, naturally they're not going to stay with you. They're going to go to the person who is paying the most money. So you need to make sure that your salaries are competitive with whatever agency that is in that area doing similar things that your counselor or your employee would be doing. That is very important. You have to be very careful about your cash flow. As I said before, there are a lot of hidden costs when you set up a business. There are a lot of costs that even when you make up a budget, you don't know about. If your furnace break down or if your refrigerator go out, you consider those a hidden cost. And if you don't have extra money set aside somewhere where you can take care of those kind of items, then a lot of people, when they go in business, if you notice, a lot of people, they fail in business because they have not done their homework in reference to projecting their budget over a period of time. And if you don't have any outlet or don't have any kind of program where you're going to be able to set aside money to do things that you have not thought of initially, that means that your business is not going to be successful, or you're going to have problems, doing your business. So you need to be very careful in reference to your cash flow. Qualifications and making sure that you're qualified for the business that you're going to run. And other people run into difficulties doing, setting up a business on those terms. You need to know before you go into business whether or not you as an individual is qualified, say, to be the executive director or be the head of the business, because if you are not qualified you can own a business, but to run it is two different things. And you need to make sure that, first of all, that you're qualified, because one day your director or your administrator is not going to be there for whatever reason. So you need to be available or be able to step into that position so that you're not paying double salary. Say if your director is out sick or executive director is out sick for a long period of time, that means that if you're not qualified to step in, where you may be able to save a few dollars, because you still have to pay this person whether she's there or not, especially if she has sick time or vacation time or whatever, that means that you have to pay like 3 people. You're paying yourself, you're paying yourself as an owner, you're paying the executive director that's off of work for sick or whatever, then you have to pay somebody to come in and sub. So you need to kind of take all those things into consideration. If I were you, I would make sure that at least you're qualified for the position that, I'm not saying that it's mandatory, but I would recommend that you are qualified to take those positions, to fill in for those positions, because if you have not counted those extra salaries, in your budget, that means right there you're paying 3 different people for the same job, and that's going to cut down on your cash flow. And again, I'm not saying that you cannot own a business if you're not qualified. I'm just saying that it's recommended that you're qualified for that position that you're in. Another thing, you have to decide whether or not you want to go into partnership, or if you want to be a not-for-profit organization or a private agency or partnership. Partnerships are okay, and I guess it depends on how your partnership is set up. I personally could not be a partner in a business except for my husband and I, because I boss him around, and he allows me to do a lot of things that if you were a partner, you probably would not be able to do. So you need to really kind of think about that. I'm not saying that partnership is not okay. It really depends on the people that you're working with. If you feel that you can get a group of people together, which I have not found yet, to get a group of people together to start a business and be successful, that's fine. I personally could not do that. And it's kind of the way that I do things. My husband tells me that I do things quite unorthodox, and I tell him that I don't feel like reading a lot of manuals and deciding that this is the best way to do a thing. I just kind of get a feel, and once I get that feel, I just go for it, you know. And he be saying, well, I don't know if it's going to work. And I say, trust me, it's going to be okay. And we have been very successful in that area. Business expansion to satisfy the need for the services. Again, it would also depend on the kind of business that you're in. You expand your business according to need. You don't just set up a business here, and just because you're doing okay here and it's 2 cents above breakfast, that you say, okay, all of a sudden I'm going to set up a business over here. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't work that way. You really need to study the need and make sure that it's the right time to expand. The services that you're offering is expandable, and then if it is, go for it. But again, you need to really think about it and do some searching to make sure that if you move from here to there, that you're not going to spread yourself so thin until you're not able to keep tabs on what's going on. And that's another thing too. If you're able to run businesses all over the city or county or whatever, and you feel that you can do it, that's fine. But in the meantime, you do not want to spread yourself too thin, because I'm the type of person that like to keep an eye on kind of what's going on. And no matter who you have working for you, you can almost assure, and okay, I'll say it anyway, they are not going to take care of your business like you would. I don't care how good they are. It's just, that's just how it is, especially if they are in charge of really taking care of the business. Now, working there is one thing, but we're talking administrative kinds of things that you really need to be available. If it's no more than just walking in and they're not knowing exactly when you're going to come or whatever, you need to, it's not that you're not trusting them, because if you hire them, that means you are trusting them, but it's just human nature that nobody is expected to take care of your stuff like you're going to take care of it. So you need to be kind of careful and spreading yourself so thin where you cannot in some way keep an eye on what's going on. Hiring practice. There's a real, I don't want to use the word, I guess I can say it's a real trick to hiring. And when you interview, like I have a team that does interviewing. I interview them first, and then I present them to the team for additional interviewing. But when you have a person fill out an application for a position, and he comes in and say that, you know, I really want to work, you need to find out what does he have to offer you. That's your first thing, because if they're just coming in to get a paycheck, to pay a note on a car, or pay some extra bills that they've accumulated and cannot get rid of, I would be very cautious in hiring them. You need to ask them, what do you have to offer my company? What do you expect from me? What can I expect from you? And depending on what their answers is, you can make a decision as to whether they are hired or not. You want people in your company that have the same, not necessarily 100%, but most of the goals and objectives that you have. And if they are not willing to commit themselves to your program, I would be very reluctant in hiring them. And even in the case of them saying, because sometimes a person come in for a job, they're going to tell you everything that you want to hear until they're hired. And then once they are hired and they've been there for a few days, you can see the change in their attitudes, the change in their performance. But if you get a very sincere person that when you do an interview, 9 times out of 10, you can kind of tell whether or not they're going to be sincere and they're going to be committed to what you are. You can be can be kind of assured that they're going to work out. And there are a certain percent staff turnover, no matter how good they are, or no matter how bad they are, you're going to have a certain percentage of turnover, so you're going to have to expect that. And if you have a business where you're getting staff coming in every other month, staff turnover every other month, you need to check your goals and objectives, you need to check your program, you need to check your performance, because you're not going to get everybody that's going to come in and leave your establishment on a regular basis unless something is wrong. Either the way that you're being as a director or an employer, that makes a big difference in people's attitude as to how they feel about you and your program, as to how you treat people. You can't really be really nasty to people and expect them to perform. You can't be nasty to your clients and expect them to appreciate what you're doing or enjoy being with you. Even in daycare, you have parents that you have to deal with, and depending on how you treat them and how the kids are treated in your daycare center as to whether or not you have a waiting list or if you have vacant spots in your program. So you need to be very careful. You know, when you're in business, sometimes you have to laugh when you're not tickled. The customer is always right, and there's no need to get upset with a customer when they are wrong. I mean, you talk to them and let them make a decision. They're either going to stay or they're not. And sometimes no matter what you do, you're not going to please everybody anyway. But if you're doing what you need to do, then you can be assured and you can feel good. You can go home and sleep at night knowing that you have not mistreated anybody or your clients, your employees, or your program. So that's very important. I think my time is running out. I hope that I have said something that would give you some generic basis of starting a business. Any further questions you may ask me at the end of our presentation here. Thank you very much.
I was really learning and taking notes from Dr. Brooks, and I just want to say I give a 1 minute on my time because I just have to make some comments on that just to start off, because that's another business opportunity. And I'm hoping that we will be able to attract her back here to do some additional workshop. I really think that she could use the whole time, and then I think I could use the whole time. So we just need to do more of this, and so we can expound. What we're doing, I think today, is just touching the surface for all of us, and it's hard to be brief. But I see so much potential in her program here in Alabama, and we have funds here, and there are a lot of us in our community accessing the type of service that she's providing, and we need to do it so desperately. In our area, we tend, even in our own community, forget those persons who have functional disabilities and the kind of disadvantages she talked about, but there are mental disadvantages and other things that, and the monies are there, millions and millions of dollars even in this state that comes from the federal government. So I really do want to ask her to work with us on setting up a workshop to come back and encourage people to go into their business, because there's a need for it. And what I want to do is try to talk, and I know Dr. Daniels will have to stand up for me. It's no problem. I'm going to receive that when the time comes. And I'm going to do like my sister. I'm just going to cut off. But until that time, you know, my area that I'm really excited about is just talking about finance in general, and I have a lot of experience, and I think a lot of you have, because as a people we've been trained to look for jobs and work job oriented, and I'm going to ask Dr. Daniels to pass these out. I want to try to read these. I'm just going to scan over them, but this is an article that I would want you to just read, because I think what it's saying is so strong, and it's a couple of years old, but I always use and I always pass out when I do seminars, and that's because we are lacking in this area. And I just want to say to all of us in this room that it's so important that we understand that the Lord is not going to do for us what he's enabled us to do for ourselves.
That's right.
And the Lord is not making us go to other people's shops. He's not making us not own businesses. He's not stopping us from owning business. We have to challenge a mindset. And so that's the first order of the day, that I find so many of us, even as Christians, we don't have a level of faith to believe what Daisy believed, that I can do this. That, I mean, you got no guarantees. You just got nothing but faith in the Lord, and something has to happen. But I always say, what is the alternative? The alternative, if you don't run your own business, then you got to work for somebody else. And so when I say, I'm talking about all of us, because there's a rule, there's a majority, there are not enough of us owning businesses to hire and employ ourselves. And I think it's such an insult for us to have young people who go to school that look like you and me, and when they go to Alabama State, and they go to Tuskegee, and they go to University of Chicago, and they make the grades, and they honor students, and then they come back to mom and dad, and we farm them out to somebody else. I think we do our community injustice, and I think that those of us who have a level of education and a measure of faith we need to take inventory, because we are living beneath the privilege, and nothing is going to be easy. And if we can go clock in for other folks, why we won't spend this time on ourselves? And I get all these excuses, and I'm here to tell you that God didn't deal with the excuses. God don't accept that, because God don't need that. God don't make them up, so God don't need them, and you don't need them. We just need to say, I'm going to try something. Each one of us have a talent and ability in this room to do something, and we have a calling for something. So in the area of business, I like to train and teach and educate in the area of finance, because that's what I'm licensed in, security and for mutual funds and stocks and bonds. And also I'm licensed in the area of insurance, and I'm licensed in the area of real estate. And I think that's a broad area. But I think no matter what else you do, when you make money, and even when Daisy make her money, she still got to know how to invest that money so she can retire. So you got to know where to place it, how to put it up, how to spend it. And I always say this because we're so bank-oriented. And the bank is really not our friend, but that's all we knew from the credit union to the bank. And I say that because I'm saying that we've got to learn now to pool some resources together, to take a chance on each other. And if it's going to be a family business, if you can't find a family member, then you find somebody else out there who is like a person you can trust and you feel good about them, and you get a plan. Or not, you just sit down and talk to God and meditate to God about what is it that you can do. What is it that you can do? I think she's right. You do what you love to do, then it doesn't seem like work. And then you can do it all the time without that headache or problem, like I hate to do this and I hate to go to work, hate to clock in on my job. One of the areas that I'm going to mention to you about is that I see that we have so many resources, and I do see so many of us having problems with credit, with understanding how credit works, how interest work, and so we are consuming people. And there's a whole nation of other people out there who gear their markets toward us, because they understand us. And this holiday season is the time of year that they really get rich, because we're going to spend money. And we don't look to own a store, we just look to go into and shop. And I want to challenge that thinking. And I'm hoping today that somebody in this room is going to say, I'm going to take a chance. You know, because if you can't take a chance, then you can't ever exhilarate your faith. And you can't stretch your faith if you don't take a chance. And I mean, you know, if you read the Bible, God told Moses he had to stretch out the rod, and God didn't open the sea until Moses made some effort. The Red Sea was there and it was not open. So he's not going to do it for you and I either until we make that effort. And yes, we will have opposition. Yes, you will have setbacks. Yes, you will have disappointments. Yes, you will have frustration. And yes, there will be days that you wish you just had never gone into this. But the alternative, I think, is even worse. Because the alternative, we can't leave that to the family. We can't leave it for generations to come. So there are two areas that I'm going to try to talk about briefly. In the area of investment, I think there are some of us who may never own a business, really have no desire to go into business, but you can develop a portfolio of stock and real estate, and something simple where if you just kept up with mutual funds, and mutual funds is a co-op for small investors, and what it does is allow persons like yourself and me who don't have a lot of money to be able to pool our resources on a national, international level, $25 a month, $50 a month. And anybody that's working who don't save $25 a month as a minimum, just not serious, you just hadn't focused right, and the priorities are wrong. We have what I call a 40-year work life, and I don't have my board here to show you, but I think this is all revelation. The average work life is around 40 years. So from ages 25 to 65, that's a work life. And if you notice from ages 0 to 25, that's what we call the trial period, because everybody is finding themselves, and you can't do much with ages 0 up to 20 because everybody's in that lost and found stage. And so by the time we find out who we are and where we're going, and by that time, hopefully if you go to college, you're out of college. If you're not out of college, by the time you're 25, you ought to have some sort of direction. And most times if we just get a job, society has set the job up where we'll work 30 years on the job, and if 40 years on the job. So if you're fortunate enough to buy a house, and I think everybody ought to own a house, And if you don't own one, I want to talk to you to show you you can own one. Because it's just, I mean, you know, we can't justify paying apartment rent. And we do that because we think I can't own a house. I don't know anybody who really don't want to own a house. I know people who think they can't get one. But not because they don't want one. They think it's credit or I don't have the down payment money. I'm saying to you, wherever there's a will, there's a way. And I'm saying that to you because I'm an example of that. I'm an example of a person who didn't understand credit, didn't understand finances. My father grew up as a common laborer. Although he was a minister, he had 13 kids, and we struggled. And I didn't never know the value of saving money nor investing money because my family never had money. And so I grew up not understanding credit. But the Lord positioned me and blessed me to work with a company for the last 12 years where I made tremendous sums of money, and I never would have thought that I would have been looking at $30,000, $40,000 a month in income. And never would have told anybody that I could have done that because I never knew anybody who was making $30,000, $40,000 a month. So certainly I thought there was some problem somewhere because everybody I knew was making, I didn't know many making it a year. But it was happening. And so I had to learn, and I have learned some things, and I had some ups and downs in the process of doing that. But I'm here to tell you, and Daisy can tell you, that if you set your mind on being a millionaire, not for the sake of being a millionaire, but for the good that you can do. And some of us need to declare that. And we need to declare because there are young ladies, she's saying she has 54, that's just in one area of the country. How many young ladies you think are in Alabama with the same problem that we are not addressing, that we are not accommodating? So even if we did nothing but help her set up those units, and that's an investment in and of itself, but it'll be a dividend that's not only in our income, but in our life resources and giving something back. So I said we are obligated to make these kinds of challenges in life. I say that to you because dealing with mutual funds, and I didn't understand that when I first got out of school, and I majored in business, had a business and a communications degree, and I was told about mutual funds, and at that time I didn't know anybody in Birmingham, Alabama that had security license. When I'm talking about mutual funds, I'm talking about E.F. Hutton, Merrill Lynch, Payne Webber, the like, and I didn't know anybody looked like me and you that had those licenses. And I also found out later that when E.F. Hutton spoke, everybody didn't listen because we didn't know what he was talking about. So there was nothing for us to listen to. So consequently, I had a chance to find out about it, and I went to New Orleans to get these licenses, and I traveled there by myself to get these licenses, and then as a result, I started training some other blacks to do this same thing. So consequently, we have a number of young blacks out there now in this city, in this state, that are doing that, but it's still a drop in the bucket. Just to understand investments, and the key to it is us not working for money, but us learning to make money work for us. And anybody who's going to work for money, that's a job, and they'll never make it because you cannot outwork money. You cannot outwork money. Every month has its own responsibility. So whatever you owe for this month, and you struggle to pay it this month, you will see it again next month. So we must get away from this 30-day, month-to-month kind of lifestyle that society has set us up on. It does not take 30 years to pay a house off, but society says it does. The credit criteria are not our criteria. They were set up by foreign people. We always go to foreign people for our resources, so they created these criteria. And you know why? Because they know that we don't understand, and they know we don't know. And so because we don't know, and the Bible says that people perish for lack of knowledge, for lack of knowledge. So therefore, they are taking advantage of that situation that we're in, and so they have us coming to the bank where we earn 3% and 4% and 5% on the CD, on a savings account, and they take the same market, this money, and take it out to the marketplace where I'm licensed to go and where you can become licensed to go, and they will go out there and make 20% on that money and 15% on that money, and they'll guarantee us 4%. And I tell people, you think about what they're saying. If they say certificate of deposit, this is your certificate to show that you got a deposit. That's all it shows. Now, where is the deposit? The deposit's out there earning money. But because we won't take a chance on ourselves, and we won't trust ourselves to do this, we'll give it to them. So we say, well, we're going to save money. They will invest money. If you're going to save money, if I save this document, that means I'm going to put it over here. I won't bother it. It'll just lie dormant. So anything you save is not going to have any action. There's a time for saving. There's a time for investing. And in your young years, in your moving about years, when you're not retired, you need to be investing money, not saving money. So when you save money, they pay us 3%, 4% interest on that money, and then that money is taxed. So in 1995, you can actually clear 2% growth. And to understand that, you must understand what they call the Rule of 72. The Rule of 72 is based on compound interest. And the rule of 72 says, no matter what interest your money earns, you divide that interest rate by 72. And it'll tell you how long it's going to take your money to double. So if you're earning 3% on your money, you divide that into 72, and I think you'll get 24. So if you're 40 years old, and it's going to take your money 24 years to double, you understand? You only got a 40-year work life now. Remember that. And it's going to take your money 24 years to turn up. Why? Because you got it in the wrong place. You got it in the wrong place, so it's not going to turn over. So for a 40-year work life, at 3% interest, your money turn over roughly 24 years. So if you got $1,000 in 24 years, you have $2,000. In another 24 years, which would be 48 years, you got $4,000. And that's why we retire broke. Not because we don't work, not because we don't attempt to save. We do save. We shouldn't be saving. We should be investing. Okay, so that takes care of the bank and the credit union, but you got to remember how that formula works, because at the same token, if you was earning 15% on that money would turn over every 4.5 years, and it'll double because the principal would double. The rule of 72 and compound interest. Rule of 72 tells you how long it takes the money to turn over. The compound interest is good, and you can only get that through the mutual fund, because the compound interest will give you interest on principal, interest on interest, interest on the dividend and capital gain. So anytime shares are bought and sold, mutual funds, why? Because it's the only way you and I can go out and buy Walmart stock and General Motors stock and Kodak stock at $1 that we can afford it, because IBM stock by itself will run you $150, $200 a share. But if you come into the co-op, you can buy it at $25, and what happens is they take the number of shares that all of us declare we're going to do $25 a month or $50 a month, whatever category you declare in, then you get a statement every month showing you what that's worth. Well, now you have equity. If you got a savings account at the bank, you don't have equity. You just have a savings account where you loaning them your money to loan out. That's why they pay you interest, because they borrowing your money to reinvest it. So you don't build up equity. And then why do you think they have a substantial withdrawal penalty? Substantial withdrawal. They don't say just withdrawal penalty, but substantial withdrawal penalty for you to use your own money. You want to pull your money out. Why are you penalized? Because that money has already been committed on the marketplace. And now you out here interrupting it with it because they got it in terms of certificate of deposit, which is CD, and we think that's safe. That's because we don't know. We don't know where to put the money to make it grow. You have what they call government securities. You got bond funds that are just as safe that you can use. But we have to learn that. And I'm saying that's an avenue for a person who don't want to own a business. You can manage to take $10,000 or put $166 a month aside, $2,000 a year for an IRA. A lot of working people don't have IRAs, and then a lot of people who do work have IRAs. They say, well, I got retired on my job, so I don't do anything else. Well, anybody who don't protect themselves, you misreading society. The government is in a state of disarray. I know you're hearing it with Social Security, you're hearing it with Medicaid, you're hearing it with Medicare. So just because we're on the job as a school teacher or a state employee does not exclude us from knowing I got to have my own backup plan. And far too many of us don't have that. So consequently, not only do we not do that, but we don't set up the trust, we don't set up the wills, we don't set up the estates. So if you die today or tomorrow, and if you've got a young child in your family, then most times we don't have the wills in place. So we have to take this to the court. Then the court appoints an attorney who helps eat up the monies with administrative costs, because we left our business undone. And so it's so many of us that don't take time to deal with this, and even in the area of insurance. And why I say this, because if you're working hard and you got a car note or a house note and you got young children, then you need to have a financial plan to take care of this even before you go into business. Because if you start going into business, and if you die today or tomorrow, then another plan has to kick into place. And that's the purpose of the insurance, not to bury you. But see, we've always been sold barrier insurance, so we still thinking barrier, and a lot of us don't want to leave nothing behind. You know, and that's a poor spirit. I'm telling you, that's a poor spirit. And I don't want to be in any family where they don't want me to have nothing. I'm telling you now, I'm serious. I got a problem with that. So I'm saying to you that you've got to say that I want to be worth $1 million, and so I'm going to insure myself for that. Daisy should be insured for that, because this is $1 million plan. I don't care how you look at it. When I get through with her real estate and her profit and everything else, between she and her husband and the man hours they put into this thing, if something happens to her today or tomorrow, it's going to be hard pressed to carry on. It'll carry on, but it won't be the same. But the key to this, and I learned this from some other avenues, is that those of us who are going to be working with Faith College and those of us who are going to be looking at being in business, we need to go in and set a plan up for ourselves. Well, I'm creating an estate, and this estate I don't want my son to have $2 million if I die, but he can live out of the interest. The money's supposed to be invested. So if you have $1 million estate, then you can today go on and write up a trust. And if something happened to you, you can say to Dr. Grant, when I leave this land to go to the other land, Dr. Grant, then I'm going to leave you $100,000. I'm going to leave, to go into a trust. Because with $1 million invested, he can realize that kind of money from what you're going to give him out of the trust. And it won't interfere with what you do with the family, nor what you do with your community. And I've got to say this because there's too many of us who the Lord has blessed who are not looking at making a way for somebody to come behind us. So consequently, the black colleges don't hardly make it because those of us who graduate will not create the trust. Now, the other folks, when they start working, they go out and create a trust, and they insure themselves for the school. They insure themselves for the church, and they insure themselves for their family. Now, they buy insurance only to take care of taxes. We buy because we don't have any money. Did y'all hear what I'm saying? We buy insurance because we don't have any money. Rich folks don't need insurance, y'all. Rich folks got their money invested in stocks and bonds and real estate, and they only may buy something just to take care of a few taxes once those things are set up. But those of us who don't have bonds and stocks and real estate, we buy insurance policies because we don't have anything else. So the key is to have the policy until you acquire something. So that means we need to get busy. The mutual fund is one avenue. Another quick avenue is real estate. And why I say real estate? I say real estate because there's so many properties around here that need to be picked up and rehabbed, and you can turn them over. And I'm talking about conservative properties, and I'm talking about in the area of Alabama where I think our cost of living, unlike Chicago's, would not be as high, and you can come here and go out there and find you still can find a $40,000 piece of property, a $50,000 piece of property, and you can go out there and negotiate that property for $500 down, or work a deal with no money down. You just got to know how to go out there and do that. We've got delinquent properties out there. We got back tax properties out there that can be picked up for pennies on the dollars. We got land out there that people didn't pay taxes on, $79, $89. All of this is available from the state, from the courthouse. You can get a list of delinquent properties. To give you an example, and I'm telling you how we can move ahead if we would spend the time to elevate ourselves. You take one piece of real estate, and if it's a $40,000 house, and you can put $500 down on that piece of property, you take that same $500, you put it in the bank. 2 years from now, you don't have much more than the $500 you put in there. But you take that one $500 and you invest into the real estate, your assets is now worth $40,000. So you turn 500 into 40,000. But the key to that is that you didn't pay 40,000 for the house, you only paid 30,000 for it. So you got a $10,000 equity line in that property. So I'm saying that $500, you got 30,000 that you now owe, but you got a piece of property that's worth 40, so you got a $10,000 line. If you owned 10 pieces of property with $10,000 in equity, that's not a lot of money. Okay? But to collapse time frames and look at where we are right now, look at the kind of money we've accumulated and what kind of business we have right now, I don't know anything that can move quicker than real estate in terms of accumulation, to own that real estate. And not only do you need to own it for your own retirement, but you can pass it off to your kids to go to college with. You can start putting properties in their names and educate them on what they need to do, because that's what the other folks do. And you don't see no other folks who don't own real estate. They own it and we pay for it. That's why you can leave here right now and go see them on a golf course, and you see us at work because we got to pay for their property. Because we believe we can't own. They believe they can. So we rent and they buy. And they rent to us. Okay, and I'm saying we need to stop that. We need to stop acting like God is dead. God is not dead. And God ain't lost, but God ain't gonna drop no money from heaven. God has given us a measure of intelligence and ability. But God has no patience for people who don't have faith. Because he can't deal with nobody who don't have faith. There's nothing God can do for us if you don't have faith. But, you know, when you find out about something and you can elevate yourself, and my grandmama always used to tell us, when you know better, you're supposed to do better. If you don't know better, you can't do any better. But when you know better, then you have no excuse to stay in the same position. But I share the real estate because the real estate is something that you can get into, and you can see it in the papers every day. And if you learn how to look for it, and I'd be happy to try to teach you what to do on that. And I'm not the expert, but I just know that that's an area. I've worked in it enough. I've made enough mistakes in it now to understand, and it's costly. And if I look at the money that I've lost, some of you just would shake your head. But see, I see a greater opportunity. And when you had no way to learn it, other than getting out there trial and error, My father didn't have a lot of money. My father didn't own a business. I had nobody to teach me business. I just had a desire to be in business. And I just told my sisters, the ones of us that could work together, I said, look, I don't want to go get on the job. So I'm going to take a chance on trying to open up some businesses while you all work the jobs, and then you help me, and then I get the business up and running so we can help each other. And we did that, and we're still doing that. And we got 2 more now coming off their jobs because we made a pact for those of us who could get together. Now the 13 kids, you know, all those ain't together. But it's 6 of us who are together. And so we just praying for the other, okay? But we're saying there's no point in everybody dying. We've got nieces and nephews. You got sons and daughters. They need a job. They want something to do this summer. I got parents saying, well, my child needs a job. Well, you need to give them one. Why should I hire your child if you don't want to hire your child? And why should I hire you if you don't think enough of you to hire you? Hire yourself. Hire yourself. And if you don't believe that you're worth hiring, that's why you're not employed. I don't want to be employed. And that's a mentality you must develop. And then see, when you develop that mentality, you won't ever settle for a job. Because I'm going to tell you something. And Daisy knows this. Nobody can pay her what she's worth. She's got to be in her own business to get what you're worth out of it. Because if somebody's going to tell you you're worth $4 an hour, $5 an hour, and you settle for that. And I'm not knocking the minimum wage. There's a time and place for it. And young people ought to be exposed to that. But at some point in time, you've got to, move away from that. I want to mention a couple other things. I'm just kind of going over some things. A lot of times we need to sit down and show our people how to clean up credit and things like that. And generally, if you got 6 months of consistent payment, you can clean the credit up and you can get a person back on track. So I'm saying that to you because, a lot of us have credit problems and the pressure that is so great. And then there are people who are so expended with their expense. They've got a job and they overextended and then they don't know how to get back straight. And so the pressures of it, and Satan used that against you. He take the financial pressure and use that against us. So the greatest thing that I can tell you that if you want to get straight and you want to own a business, the first thing I should have said, but I still will say, that you ought to be tithing. Because everything we're saying up here is irrelevant if you're not going to tithe. Because you're going to work against yourself. And it's hard to kick against the prick. And we just can't help you with this information if you're not going to tithe. God got us here on the honor system. And so even with your business, my business, all the dollars are laid on the altar first. And then we tithe the money. And so I'm not worried about the light bill, the gas bill, the water bill. And I'm not saying there's a time I don't get challenged with it, but I just have to believe God. Because I'm going to be faithful with my tithes. I wasn't always that way. But as you grow, and if you're growing in Christ, He will let you come into a level of revelation. If you got an humble spirit, God will send somebody by to get you on track. But if you don't have an humble spirit, people can't touch you, they can't tell you, they can't suggest to you, then you're going to have to find out the hard way. And so I'm saying to you that if you're not tithing, that's the first thing you want to do to turn your financial situation around. The second thing you want to do is bless somebody else with an offering. God didn't put an amount on it. You want to do $5, $10, $15. If you want to do $100, whatever it is, but bless somebody. And don't make a show out of it, because God's whatever you do secretly, He will reward openly. And you don't know who around you, a church member, co-worker, a family member, who would just be so glad to get $10 for gas in their car. You don't know what the situation is. So don't even worry about it. If the Lord put it on your heart that you ought to touch somebody today, then just go on and do it. Don't drag around. Don't put it off. Do that. Because if you won't be slothful, then God won't be slothful. Because God's gonna recognize the effort, and God's gonna bless the effort. The other thing I want to mention to you is that to combine the real estate and the mutual funds together, that's a kind of a portfolio that if you don't own a business. Now, there's some other business you can own, like franchises. And I'm saying that we need to have seminars on that, because some of you have ideas of what you want to be and what you want to do. And to go to the bank, because you don't have the money, you do have to come up with the business plan, but you have to feel good about it, and you cannot let somebody turn you down. Colonel Sanders was 65 years old when he first got his Social Security check, and he said there wasn't enough money. He realized he had a problem. He didn't realize that until he was 65. So all of a sudden he went out and started selling chicken like nobody was never eating chicken before. But he had no choice. Folks was already eating chicken. He said, but you ain't ate no chicken like this chicken. This chicken is finger licking good. Now I know you had chicken, but it ain't like this chicken. You need to taste my chicken. So the people bought this man chicken. This man drove around the country trying to sell his chicken recipe at age 65. At age 95, he was a millionaire. So you can't deal with the age. Satan is a deceiver. And he'll tell you you're too old and it's too late. But Satan is a liar, and he's the father of deception. And anything that's negative is not of God. If God gives you health, strength, and breath, you ought to be doing something. And you ought to be trying to do something. Now, you know I'm not through, but you see what this man is doing to me. So I'm just going to cut off. So he'll let me come back.
See, each of these ladies could use a morning, and each would be just as vibrant as the first two have been. Now, I'm going to run a very, very, very dangerous risk. You know what I'm about to say, don't you?
Great.
Can we take a 10-minute break without scattering all over this hotel?
Sure.
Can we?
Okay.
We got a lot of good things to come. Could we crank back up at 15 minutes to 11?